Okay. Okay. Here it is. It seems that we are live. That's perfect. So, anybody on Instagram, TikTok, thumbs up, please, so that I can know that we are all live together. You guys can hear me. Same thing on the stream. If I can get somebody to tell me if we are good to go. Now, all right. Yo, Sensei, what's going on, man? Oh, Sensei, I haven't been called that in a long time, but thank you. I appreciate it, brother. Um, can somebody on the live stream tell me yay or nay if we are good off the Facebook? We're good. So it seems that we're good. We're good to go. So there we go. I don't know who needs to hear this today, but I got a calling to change the subject of my podcast this morning. Something told me that I should be speaking about something that really, really changed my life. One of my most impactful realization: pain and suffering are the greatest of teachers, and we need to learn how to embrace them. This episode of the Nico Lagan Show is brought to you by the Alpha Creator Blueprint. Are you a male content creator on a mission to help other men? Is your content not getting the attention that it deserves? Would you like to increase your views by 10, 100, even 1,000 times? If so, head to the alphacreatorblueprint.com and let us show you how we can help. Welcome to the Nico Lagan Show. I am your host, Nico Lagan, aka Mr. Masculinity. This this is very personal. I got to say that I never in 1,000 years expected to be speaking about this today. I had a completely different episode in mind where I would speak about masculinity like I mostly do, but there's something that told me that I needed to speak about suffering. I needed to speak about pain. I needed to speak about how these are the greatest of teachers. These are things that happens to us that we need to listen to because it has changed my life. This is a focus. This is a mindset that completely changed who I am and how I am today. So yeah, it's going to be personal. If you guys have questions, please let me know. Interrupt me at any given time. I want to hear from you guys to see how you feel about what I'm saying. This is the whole point of doing these lives. So if you have comments, let me know. But I will get into the heat of the subject right now. But interact. Let me know if you have questions. You know, I'm sure everybody out there knows this, but I want to make sure to repeat it. I want to make sure that it's on your mind. It is fucking easy to be happy when everything goes well. When everything is going your way, man, it's easy to be happy, right? But what happens when shit hits the fan? What is your first reaction when your life goes to shit? Is it to swear at the world? Is it to scream that it's unfair, that you don't deserve this? If so, this episode is exactly for you. So let me ask you this. The last time you woke up feeling like shit, you knew it in your heart that it would be one of those fucking days. We all know what those are, right? When when we wake up and we're like, motherfucker, this day is going to suck. We all have them. It's totally normal. But how did you react last time that it actually happened to you? Did you embrace it? Did you think that maybe there was something to learn? Or did you simply brush it off? Did you get busy? Did you get yourself entertained? Did you start working? Did you distract yourself from facing the crude reality that you're suffering, that you're in pain. Don't know why, but what did you do? Did you embrace it, or did you do like most of us do and simply try to brush it away? What if I were to tell you that if you did indeed brush it away and decided not to face it, that you robbed yourself from one of the greatest opportunity to learn about who you truly are? Think about that one for a second. We are taught from a young age that suffering is not good, that we shouldn't be in pain. We try to avoid it with everything that we can. Look at what safe spaces are. Safe spaces were created by parents that want to avoid their children from suffering. So instead of teaching our kids, our sons, to embrace pain and suffering, we try to shelter them from it. So, what if I were to tell you, once again, I'll ask you this question because we all know what a safe space is. What if by not allowing yourself to suffer, you robbed yourself from one of the greatest moments in your life? For any of you that's ever listened to one of my podcasts, that's ever um, listened to one of my lives, I often speak about how I spent a lot of time in the woods. Like I spent a couple of years in the woods, about 3 years or so. And a good year and a half of them I spent by myself. And, as an extrovert, this is about the hardest thing that you can do. Spending time by yourself is, as an extrovert, the hardest thing that you can do because you recharge your batteries by being with people. And I'm an extrovert. I'm very extroverted. And, you know, when, let's put it into context, when before I left to go to the woods, I lived a life that was extremely busy. I would wake up in the morning at 4 o'clock. I would do some reading, pack my shit to go to work, go to the gym, work out for an hour and a half, then head on my customer meetings where I would do my 8-10 hours every day. Then I would come back home, take a nap, and I would head to the gym where I would teach martial art. This was my life. Everything, absolutely everything in my life was basically a distraction. All I did was to be busy all the time, and that's how I liked it. Was it on purpose? Deep down, I believe that it was, but was I aware of this back then? No. But there is no way for you to face yourself if you don't allow yourself some free time. And, you know, when this whole pandemic happened, I lived alone, so I had two choices. I was either going to stay in the city, or I could decide to move away to the house that I had purchased a few years prior, where I would be completely isolated from the world. And, in my head, it only made sense to do so because I was already in a situation where I can do shit. I lived alone. I wasn't allowed to go to the gym, restaurants, martial art gym, anywhere, anything that was making my days busy. I couldn't do anymore. So, I embraced it. I just said, fuck it. What can I do? I can either choose to stay in the city not being able to do anything, or I could simply move to the house, my investment house that I had in the middle of nowhere, and embrace it. This is exactly what I did. This was one of the scariest decisions I've ever taken by far, but I knew that I needed to face myself, for lack of a better term. I needed to be able to learn how to be alone, because I fully realized that this was a weakness. This was something that I had never embraced, and it is I'm not the biggest proponents of working on your weaknesses. I'd rather develop my strength, but being able to spend time alone is a gift. You need to develop. If you're an extrovert like me, you need to develop that skill because it's fucking magical when you get to listen to who you truly are. And you know, when I decided to move down there was a decision that had been taken a long time ago. As fucked up as this is going to sound, a few years before I moved to that house, I got the feeling that I should buy a house in the middle of nowhere. I know this sounds really fucked up, but I'm somebody that is very, very aware of their instincts and I follow my instincts all the time. Anytime that I can, I will be following my instincts. So something had told me to buy a house and I've never been the best with money. So to me, it was an investment. I just said, let's find something that I can afford. And instead of spending that money on dumb shit, I'm going to invest it on a house where one day I will need. I knew that I needed to buy that exact house. When I saw it, there's something that told me that that was that house and I needed to buy it because one day I would need it. And funny enough, a couple of years ago, this is the situation that I was in. So going back to that 3 years ago, I decided to move to the woods by myself with my dog. I went from going to an extremely busy life to having a shit ton of free time. And let me tell you something, this is not fucking pleasant. For me to be bored is fucking atrocious. This is torture to me. It is something that I had to learn, but it was absolutely torture for me. But I knew that it was one of my biggest weakness, and I needed to do something about it. And you know, one of the things that happens when you do spend a lot of time by yourself is that that little voice that you never listen to, that little voice that's inside you, call it your instinct, call it God, call it the universe, call it however you choose to call it, that voice inside of you that's speaking, but you don't ever take the time to listen to. Well, when you're alone by yourself, guess what? You don't have a fucking choice. You need to listen to that voice because there's nothing else to do. There's no distractions. You can't run away from it because it's in your head. There was no way for me to create distraction that would take me away from what that voice had to tell me. And you know that voice knows everything about you, the good, the bad, and it's really not scared to call it as it is. You know, I like to say that the answers you're looking for are in the mirror. If you're looking for solutions to the problems that you're facing, look at yourself in the mirror. The answers are right there for you. And to me, that little voice was exactly what I'm talking about. This is exactly that voice was a reflection of myself. And I've never allowed myself to listen. It's really that simple. But in the woods by myself, I did not have anywhere to hide. So listening is what I did. But let me tell you something. This fucking sucked. Like hearing your voice telling you all your dark secret was by far the hardest part of my life up to now. Because think about it, it knows who you are. There's no bullshit. It's not there it doesn't care about your feelings. It will tell you what you need to hear, when you need to hear it. All you have to do is to listen. And because for the first time in my life, I did allow myself to listen and to listen to my darkest secrets, it was painful. I was suffering. I did not enjoy it. You know, I will say this without shame. I spent time crying. I spent time demolished. I spent time in a baby position, in the fetal position in my bed. I did not want to do anything. And I will say this as a man. I will say this as a strong masculine man that that voice is fucking brutal. It can be your damnation or your salvation. It really depends on how you see it, but it taught me that, or it reminded me that I was an asshole, that I've hurt a lot of people in my life, that I lacked compassion, I lacked empathy, and simply put, I was selfish. And understanding that I was an asshole to a lot of people around me was a hard pill to swallow. This was something that nobody wants to hear about themselves. This is something that we don't want to admit to ourselves, but the point of the matter is that it is still a fact. You've hurt some people, you've been assholes to people, you've lacked compassion, you lacked empathy, you were selfish, and I'm no different. But accepting that is a fucking hard pill to swallow. It is something that you need to admit to yourself if you ever want to move forward. And my reaction to this was not to hide. My reaction to this was not to try to bury it with alcohol or drugs. On the contrary, I just decided to embrace it. I simply said to myself, you know what? There's no running from this. So I took 3 months off work. I packed my motorcycle and I left for 3 weeks by myself. I had never done anything like that before. I had somewhat of an idea where I wanted to go, but I didn't have an itinerary. I did not know. I didn't have specific days that I was going to spend somewhere compared to somewhere else. All I did is I left by myself with my bike and saw where freedom would take me. You on those type of trips, you tend to meet people that might not mean much in the moment, or the experiences that you're living might not mean that much in the moment, but I can tell you that it did put my life in perspective. I On that trip I realized that I had grown comfortable, that I was just skating by, I was just doing the bare minimum, I was just enjoying my life, and I realized that my job was not fulfilling anymore. But the thing that I can tell you that really opened my eyes to all of this, that was the fact that I had started to identify with my job. I took pride in the fact that I could say to people that I was a sales engineer. You know why? You know, I've always had a chip on my shoulder. I I've always been ashamed that I dropped out of school when I was 15 years old. That to this day, even though that I went back to school in my 20s, I only have a high school equivalency. I don't even have a real high school diploma. I did a year and a half of technical college, but yet all the people that I was working with were engineers. They went to university, they were highly educated, but you know what? I made the exact same salary as they did. And I was very fucking proud of calling myself an engineer. Although I didn't have the education, this was pride. And we all know how pride can be fucking bad for you. But this is what I had become. I had become my job. I had become an engineer because I was ashamed that I had no education, or I didn't have the education that all the people on my team had. And, that realization also forced me to admit that I was scared of taking the next step because I didn't want to lose that title. I was too comfortable with that title. I identified with that title, and I was scared to lose it. I wanted to show off my title. And I think this is what changed my mind the best, is really to detach myself from who I believed I was. But at the same time, I had spent almost 20 years get to that point. So what the fuck was I supposed to do if I was not going to be my job anymore? How the fuck was I going to identify who would Nico become? And this is the one that was hard. That was hard for me. I had given everything I had to get to that point, and now I was realizing that I needed to change. I needed to quit that. I needed to become something better. And this and all these conclusions were only possible because I decided to suffer. I decided to spend time alone, and I decided to look at myself for who I was and to accept the fact that I am flawed. I am a flawed individual. There is no question about it. And the biggest and the major difference from back then to today is the fact that I accept that. I embrace the fact that I am flawed. But all of what I'm doing right now stems from that decision. The fact that I'm traveling the US right now with my girlfriend and dog in an RV, that I've written my first book, that I started a video production company, that I have 6 full-time employees, the fact that I've been on a radio show, the fact that I'm going to be part of my first TV show next week, that I'm going to appear on podcasts with hundreds of thousands, if not millions of downloads, all started because I decided to look at myself in the mirror, to admit that I was a flawed, shitty individual, and to say that, and to accept that pain and suffering would allow me to realize what I needed to do, who I was, and who I needed to become. This is why I'm telling you that pain and suffering are the greatest of teachers. They are there to teach you something that you don't know about yourself, and that all you need to do is to go through it, is to accept it. And it's easy for us to, it's easy for us to simply distract ourselves, because distractions are everywhere today. It's so simple. There are literally everywhere there are distractions. Very fucking simple nowadays to just hide behind entertainment, distraction, work, instead of facing the simple fact that you are an asshole, that you're flawed, that you have things to work on, that you have hurt people. And, accepting the fact that you're flawed doesn't mean that you won't feel like shit anymore. Because I can tell you that this morning was one of those days. I woke up and I'm like, motherfucker. When you slept like shit, you wake up and you know it. You're just like, fucking Christ, this is going to be one of those days. And in the past, I would have reacted a whole lot differently than what I did this morning. Instead of being mad, instead of thinking that life is unfair, you know what I did? I watched one of my favorite video. I sat at my desk. I watched one of my favorite video that I actually posted this morning, actually, but it comes from Coach Carter. And it's at the end. It's when one of his students, one of his basketball player, tells him how he changed his life. But all to say that it's one of those videos that hit me right in the feelings. Like every time I look at this, it it amazes me. Hopefully you guys have seen Coach Carter, because if you haven't, you guys need to watch this. It's a brilliant movie. It's top 3 of my favorite movies of all time. But that quote in there is that video right there is my favorite. And it put me into a state where, yes, I felt like shit, but at the same time, it reminded me that shit is going to happen. That the only thing that you really control is how you react to it, because it is out of your control. Shit's going to happen. It's a certainty. If there's one thing that is certain in life, is that you're going to die, and that shit's going to happen. That's it. Those are the two certainties that you have. And you know what's interesting, and I like how life works, because if you learn to pay attention, if you learn to look at what's going on around you and to try to realize what it's supposed to mean, what's the lesson for you to learn from these situations, you start to realize that everything that happens to you is for a reason. I know this is most people don't like to believe that you are meant for something, you are supposed to accomplish something, because that puts the responsibility on the individual where it fucking belongs. That's a surprise. If that's a surprise for you, you must know that, yeah, if your life sucks, chances are it's your fault. But at the same time, you need to embrace those dark moments. And yesterday I was sitting in church, and the pastor was talking about how in the Bible, in the hymns, in the portion of, how is it called again, it's, if you open it right in the middle, pow, it's right there. I'm losing my words right now, but the priest said something that really, really touched me, and this is what he said: there is a time for everything, there's a season for every activity under the heavens. There's a time to be born, there's a time to die, a time to plant and a time to uproot, a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to tear down and a time to build, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance, a time to scatter stones and a time to gather them, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to search and a time to give up, a time to keep and a time to throw away, a time to tear and a time to mend, a time to be silent and a time to speak, a time to love and a time to hate, a time for war and a time for peace. This is how I see it. There's a time to be happy and there's a time to suffer, but all that really matters is that you embrace both of them, because both are part of you. So the next time you feel like shit, don't try to cover it. Don't run from it. On the contrary, embrace it. Let yourself hurt and see what's really going on. There's a reason for everything that happens to you. Your job is to figure out what it all means, because there's nobody else that can do it for you. And, I've come to realize that pain reminds us to live in the present moment. And for us to not do so is robbing ourselves from one of the best, greatest lessons you might ever learn. Because don't forget, being happy is easy when all is going well in your life. But where you truly, truly learn is when you're mourning, when you're in pain, and when you're suffering. Thank you for every single one of you out there. I appreciate you. I am so grateful for every single one of you. So thank you. Happy Father's Day for all the fathers out there, because yesterday was Father's Day. But I shouldn't have to wait for Father's Day for you for congratulating every single father out there that's raising the next generation of boys, that's teaching their sons how to be good men. All the props to you. I salute you. Continue doing the great work that you're doing. And on that note, never forget that the world is changed one man at a time, and that it takes just one man to change the world. Peace out, brothers. Oh, let me take the time to answer some of your questions here on the feed. If you guys still have questions, let me know. I totally relate. Good stuff, Mike. Happy that this makes sense to you. Please read all the religions and come towards the right one. Please read about Islam. I'm sure that if you truly learn about Islam, you will accept it. You know, I've never read Islam, but I'm a big fan of Buddhist texts. I'm a big fan of Gnosticism, and I am a big fan of Christian texts. Maybe one day I'll get to Islam, but right now, my calling is definitely towards the Bible. This is where my heart is. So this is where I will um, I will continue reading. On that note, guys, peace out. Have a good one.